The American people think the reason for inflation is government spending more money. Simply not true.
Dispel some of those who say, well, it's the government spending. No, it isn't.
And you know what? You can say what you want, but this would have never happened to Donald Trump.
Tom Brady is returning to football. That's the biggest story in America. Nothing else matters. Just kidding. Top Democrats apparently don't understand how inflation works. Biden was denied a phone call with the leader of the Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, regarding foreign oil. That's a big problem. And even some lefties are commenting on it now. And also some Ukrainian updates. Lots of bombing and lots of shelling over the weekend. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. I said it, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brady would be back to play football, and lo and behold, he has returned. But again, much more pressing news around the world. Apparently, top Democrats don't understand inflation. We'll get to that story first, but holy cow, what's going on in Ukraine? Never getting easier to understand. First casualty of war is the truth, and that's becoming very evident in the last couple days. But I want to get to this as our top thing at the top of the show here. Top Democrats don't understand inflation, how it works, what it is, what's causing it, how we might be able to slow it down or stop it at all. But Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi were at this big, I don't even know what you call it, Democrat hoopla in, I think it was New Jersey. Big Democrat get together over the weekend. President Biden spoke on Friday. Nancy Pelosi got up and did a press conference on Saturday. And they said some ridiculously funny things. It would be funny. It would be funny if it weren't so horrifying. If you haven't already, I see a couple thousand you watch it. Please click the little like button, click the little share button. Really, really appreciate it. And also, people need to see this. Joe Biden saying some ridiculous things about inflation and then being echoed by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We've got those two clips, and then also a clip from Janet Yellen, the head of the Federal. What is she? The Treasury Secretary? I'm not even sure what Yellen is. I think she's a Treasury Secretary. What's his face? Powell is still the head of the Federal Reserve. Check out this clip from President Biden over the weekend. We'll discuss on the other side.
So I'm sick of this stuff. We have to talk about it because the American people think the reason for inflation is government spending more money. Simply not true.
So he went on and talked about inflation and what's causing it, what's not. I want to explain this. We explained it in a reel over the weekend. So if you follow the Daily Caller Instagram or me on Instagram, feel free to do so. I'm hilarious, by the way. You saw kind of the brief explanation, but just kind of reiterating why that's not true. When Joe Biden is saying, one, I don't know if he's wrong or arguing against a straw man, because what he's saying is that the government spending money doesn't inherently cause inflation. If that's what he's saying, he's right. Technically, the government spending money doesn't technically cause inflation automatically. The problem is, and I don't know if he's doing this on purpose, just completely ignoring the argument that people actually are making. The problem is when the government spends money that it doesn't have and spends more money in the history of our government in the last 2 years has spent more money in the history of planet Earth than any other government ever. Literally ever. And that's adjusted for inflation all time. We've spent more money than going into World War II with this whole coronavirus pandemic. So when he says the government spending money doesn't increase inflation, that's just not true. Technically, the government spending $1 does not increase inflation, but we've spent more money than any government in the history of history. And two, the money that we're spending, we don't have. The United States government is spending money they don't have, and not only do they not have it, the money that they're spending doesn't exist. When people talk about the Federal Reserve printing money, and I'm going to butcher this, I should have had my econ friend on here to explain how money is actually made. There's no printing press. There's no inserting dollars into the system. What happens is the Federal Reserve drops interest rates. Interest rates have never been this low, and they've never stayed this low for this long of a period of time. Interest rates drop. When that happens, banks, governments, other institutions lend money. And when they lend money, that money doesn't necessarily exist yet, and therefore it creates money. Again, for you economist folks that are in the comment section, I know I'm butchering this. I'm sorry. But that's the broad scopes term, or the broad scopes idea of how money is created. So the government, one, doesn't have the money that we're spending, and two, it isn't created yet. So they're going into debt, therefore creating more money, which that is causing inflation. So when they say that government spending doesn't cause inflation, technically that's accurate, but nobody's arguing that. What we're arguing is, hey, maybe we don't need to go into such massive debt to dig ourselves out of a hole that we put ourselves in. Nancy Pelosi then echoed the president's sentiment a day later, saying this. I'm not sure how long this clip is. I might have taken a bunch of it. I might have taken, I don't know. But listen to this. This is what Nancy Pelosi is saying, the Speaker of the freaking House. And both of these, President Biden and Speaker Pelosi, have been around long enough to have known and talked to Milton Friedman. They should know what they're saying is completely inaccurate. Watch this.
So when we're having this discussion, it's important to dispel some of those who say, well, it's the government spending. No, it isn't. The government spending is doing the exact reverse, reducing the national debt. It is not inflationary, A. B, we don't want to reduce the increase in jobs, which we're very proud of. This president breaking records, historic numbers of jobs created in the first year of his term in office, and a lot of it traced to the American Recovery Act. But yeah, we're paying very close attention to it. But this starts with Putin.
Hold on, Miss Speaker. Are you saying that if we spend more money, we can spend ourselves out of debt? Well, if that's the case, why don't we just spend $1 million trillion and lower the national debt, which is over $30 trillion now, to zero? Holy cow, she fixed economics. The government spending money apparently does the exact opposite of getting us into debt and causing inflation. Say that again. Apparently, according to the Speaker of the House of the United States of America, the government spending money that it doesn't have and doesn't exist lowers the. What did she say? Did she say national debt specifically? I'm going to play that part one more time because I'm just so curious. I want to get this right. What did the speaker say?
Who say, well, it's the government spending. No, it isn't. The government spending is doing the exact reverse, reducing the national debt.
I think she was talking about inflation. Maybe she was misspeaking and trying to say inflation instead of national debt. But the government spending reduces debt. Hey, babe, I know we're in terrible, completely bad credit card debt. I know we're in suffocating credit card debt, but I think I found a way to get out of it. I'm going to buy a flat screen TV and a sound system to go with it. To get out of our massive credit card debt, I'm going to buy a G-Wagon. That's essentially what she's saying. I don't know how well that would go over with my wife. I would imagine not well. Dang it, I'm going to play this other clip one more time because I'm trying to remember what she said there.
It's not inflationary, A. B, we don't want to reduce the increase in jobs, which we're very proud of. This president breaking records, historic numbers of jobs created in the first year of his term in office, and a lot of.
That's what it was. Then she goes on to talk about the record number of jobs. Holy cow! Maybe what's an analogy for that? Hey, babe, I fired everybody that works at my company. And then I rehired them, therefore created 1 million jobs every single day. Yeah, if you fire people from their jobs and then allow them to go back to work, I don't know if that counts as creating jobs, Miss Speaker. So there's that. Then let me see if I can get to this clip. Janet Yellen, is it the Treasury Secretary? I don't even know what job she holds. She's been a part of the Federal Reserve for a super long time. Fairly competent in all accounts that I understand, but there's that. Janet Yellen was on one of the talk shows saying this, which scares me to death.
I don't want to make a prediction exactly as to what's going to happen in the second half of the year. You know, we're likely to see another year in which 12-month inflation numbers remain very uncomfortably high.
I'm sick of this stuff.
Oops, sorry about that. That's Janet Yellen talking about, we're likely to see another 12 months, which inflation is uncomfortably high. Didn't somebody tell Janet Yellen that we should spend more money to get ourselves out of debt? Gosh, what a dummy. The Treasury Secretary is talking about inflation. So that's that. Inflation again at a 7.8, I think, year over year, 40-year high. It is going to be, you got to slow down the economy to get rid of inflation. So it's going to be interesting to see how the government tries to do that or doesn't try to do that and just lets inflation run rampant over the next year. I wanted to get to this story. This is actually kind of fascinating. And a bunch of different people taking different sides to this thing. On February 9th, so that is almost a month and a half ago, Biden managed to get in a phone conversation with Saudi Arabia's King Salman, the 86-year-old father of Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, which, so MBS, if you don't know this about Saudi Arabia, they've got a king dude who I think is technically at the top of the food chain, and MBS, who Mohammed bin Salman, he's his son, dude's like 36 years old and is effectively running Saudi Arabia. He's the top guy, even though structurally the King Solomon's at the top. The crown prince is the guy who runs Saudi Arabia. He bought the world's most expensive yacht, the world's most expensive painting, the world's most expensive house. This dude is running the show. But Biden was unable to speak directly with the leader known as MBS. There were some expectations of a phone call with MBS, but that didn't happen, U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal. The Saudis have been seeking more support from the U.S. for their involvement in the Yemen civil war, as well as help with their own nuclear program to keep peace with Iran, the Journal reported. The Emirates, meanwhile, have concerns about their own concerns about Iran. Yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in this article, and they talk about the back and forth between Iran, India, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, all of these different things that are going on, essentially saying geopolitics is very, very difficult. I'm sure glad we have people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris heading it up for the United States of America. But the main thing that I thought was super interesting is how some different people have responded to that. Trevor Noah is a guy who hosts The Daily Show, Jon Stewart's old show on Comedy Central. Trevor is a big-time lefty in terms of giving the government more power and using moral authority to dictate how he thinks other people should act. I disagree with Trevor on a lot of things, but what I thought he said on his Friday show was super freaking interesting. Again, this is Trevor Noah on Comedy Central, not a right-wing conservative-leaning news outlet, talking about President Biden getting snubbed by the United Emirates. Watch this clip. Again, fascinating to see.
But either way, man, there's no denying that Saudi Arabia isn't playing ball with Joe Biden. And you know what? You can say what you want, but this would have never happened to Donald Trump. Never. No one was ever ignoring Donald Trump's calls. Yeah, because if you ignored Donald Trump's calls, you didn't know how he would respond. Maybe he'd send an angry tweet, or maybe he'd just ban your country from everything. You don't know. That's why I bet in these situations, Biden actually wishes that he could hire Trump to step in as President Wildcard. Just keep everyone on their toes. Because if Trump was calling, you best believe the UAE, they'll be racing to pick up the phone.
So there's that. That's Trevor Noah on the Daily Show, not the Daily Caller. That's where I work. On the Daily Show, talking about, hey, one thing is for sure: if President Donald Trump was in office, nobody's ignoring his phone calls. Which brought me to this. We played this clip. We played this clip last week. John Daly, golfer, was talking to President Trump over the phone. And I just thought it was interesting and wanted to play it again back to back with that Trevor Noah clip of saying, hey, Trump might have been erratic in some cases, just kind of firing things off, tweets, mean comments, news interviews, just all different directions. But that's part of the reason why people around the world wanted to stay on his good side. And he explained that to John Daly. We played that clip last week. I'll play it again really quick just so you can hear what he's saying back to back with that clip from Trevor Noah.
Praise them.
Yeah. They're all saying, oh, he's a nuclear power. It's like they're a friend of him. He was a friend of mine. I got along great with him. I say, Vladimir, if you're doing, we're hitting Moscow. I said, we're going to hit Moscow. And he sort of believed me, like 5%, 10%. That's all you need. He never did it during my time, John, No.
So that's President Trump talking to John Daly, talking about Russia, saying, hey, he told Vladimir Putin that he wasn't going to tolerate any funny business, and if he did, they're going to hit Moscow. And Trump said, just from a negotiating standpoint, Donald Trump said, I probably believed me 5-10%, but that's all you need. You only need that inkling of what if he does to make anything stop. But again, Trevor Noah on the lefty side, echoing that sentiment that, hey, Donald Trump's phone calls don't get ignored. So there's that. I want to bring some updates here before we hop off. What's going on in... Oh, you know what? This is not correlating with this Chiron right here. But the Pfizer CEO says you need a fourth COVID-19 shot. So there's that. I got this big long article that I can read some of, but maybe we'll get that towards the end of this. But this has actually been super interesting. The U.S. government has reason to believe that Russia asked China for military equipment and other support following the start of their war in Ukraine, 3 U.S. officials confirmed on Sunday. This is from the Daily Caller. Officials declined to elaborate on whether China agreed to the request or whether the U.S. even knows the answer to that question. They declined to say what kind of equipment was requested and whether it was lethal. The news came as at least 35 people were killed and 134 injured when a Russian airstrike hit a military base in western Ukraine about 20 miles away from the Polish border. So Putin is getting dangerously close to a NATO country, Poland, which I think, right? I'm pretty sure. Now I'm like hyper concerned about calling countries NATO countries when they might not be, because Vice President Kamala Harris over the weekend, if you didn't see this, at that big Democrat powwow that everybody was at, said, we need to protect Ukraine to support NATO. Ukraine is not a part of NATO. So now I'm like hyper aware of not wanting to look as dumb as the vice president does. But Putin getting dangerously close to the Polish border. Here's this. Also, there's increased concerns that Russia could be prepared to use chemical weapons to attack Ukraine, with Western officials and strategists warning that threats posed to Moscow and Russian Vladimir Putin in this regard is credible and serious. President Joe Biden warned Friday that there would be a severe price to pay if Russia used chemical weapons in Ukraine, and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Sunday that such a move would be a war crime. And then I wanted to talk about this because this is freaking fascinating, guys. I know it's not the most exciting thing, but I think a lot of people are still paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine. And I think a lot of people, want to hear and see what's going on. A senior Ukrainian official said Israeli Prime Minister Bennett, try to get the geography straight here. Israeli Prime Minister Bennett told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday that he should take Russian President Vladimir Putin's proposal to ending the war. An official in the Israeli Prime Minister's office denies the claim. So there's a lot of stuff floating out there that the Israeli guy is telling the Ukrainian guy to accept the Russian guy's proposal. Bennett, the Israeli guy, has emerged as a key mediator between Putin and Zelensky in the last 2 weeks. Israel has said it needs to remain neutral in the mediation, but the Ukrainian official told Axios that Bennett must present proposals to do more than act as a mailbox between the two sides. So this is getting interesting. Putin wants to find a way out. Zelensky doesn't want to surrender, but at the same time would love this thing to end. Bennett in Israel wants Russian products, whether it be energy or whatever Russian manufacturing. So he wants this thing to be over. Zelensky and his advisors didn't like Bennett's recommendation, according to a Ukrainian official. Bennett is basically telling us to surrender, and we have no intention of doing that, a Ukrainian official told Axios on Tuesday. In the last 2 weeks, and especially after Bennett's trip to Moscow last Saturday, so the Israeli guy went to Moscow on last Saturday, the Israeli government has claimed that it needs to maintain a careful, balanced approach to the war in Ukraine. So, all of that is happening, trying to mediate some sort of end to the war with Ukraine on board, with Russia on board, so that Israel can get the energy products that it wants from a partner in Russia. All of this is getting weird, and all of this is getting crazy. I don't know how much we want to dig into the weeds here, because that's basically what's happening. And again, I don't necessarily want to get into all of the shelling stuff. I don't want to get into the biolab stuff, because there's stuff you can get out there. I'm not trying not to strive so far into that, because I think, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the first casualty of war is the truth. I think a lot of people don't know what's going on. I think broad scopes, we can probably all agree that Ukraine is getting shelled by the Russians. Ukraine has every incentive to exaggerate what's going on, and Putin seems to be a madman. Those are the three things among very few that I think we can all at least agree on is happening. Russia's continuing to shell. So I'm more interested in the political-driven side of, is there going to be a ceasefire? Is Putin going to occupy? Is Zelensky going to give in at any point? That's what I care about. So if you want all of the other happenings of, well, they bombed this place and they circled this place and now there's a siege on this city, a lot of that stuff is elsewhere. It's difficult to tell what's actually going on, so I'm just not going to ignore it, but largely let you listen to that other places. I'm more interested in the policy side and seeing what's happening in the diplomatic efforts. That being said, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We're going to be live from a bunch of different places for the rest of the week. We're in Nashville doing the Candace Owens show tomorrow, so that should be fun. If you subscribe to the Daily Wire, I know they're a competitor, but I was fortunate enough to head on over to Nashville tomorrow to do the Candace Owens show. So we'll be live from Nashville tomorrow, and then Phoenix on Wednesday and Thursday. But we'll be right here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever the heck you're watching this. We will be there. If you haven't already, would love a follow on the Instagram, social media, anywhere you listen to, wherever you can get the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That's what I'm trying to say. But also, shoot me a follow on any of your social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Getter. I'm on Truth now. Just type in Jobob, Truth Social, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all of those. Instagram has been fun. I've been hilarious. I will say so myself. So give me a follow on Instagram anywhere you follow people on the internet. We'll have some fun conversations on those platforms. But that's going to do it for us today here in the Dingy Bunker for the week. Again, tomorrow we'll be live from Nashville, but you can also check me out on the Candace Owens show. We'll be having some fun there, making some jokes about the news. Without further ado, we'll see you tomorrow. God bless America.